tightening of your grip and the closing of your mind. I can only hope you'll dance regardless of the circumstance. The sand will shift, the tide will turn. Hold fast to who you are. Be happy anyway. Be happy anyway. The good and bad in life will come to pass, for they do not come to stay. Be happy anyway. Be happy anyway. Staring at the same old wall will surely drive you a bit, and you will not prevail telling the same tale, so just drop it. It's time to plant a hopeful seed and turn away from the choking need to stare at what's not wanted. There's a new picture out there. Be happy anyway. Be happy anyway. The good and bad in life will come to pass, for they do not come to stay. Be happy anyway. Be happy anyway. Baby, you have the right to sing the blues. Oh, but you also have a mind that's free to choose. The headlines, they are changing, and the clouds are gonna clear. So start speaking what you're dreaming of instead of what you fear. Be happy anyway. Be happy anyway. There is so much there to share within you. Come on then, right now, I dare you. Be happy anyway. Be happy anyway. The good and bad in life will come to pass, for they do not come to stay. Be happy anyway. Be happy anyway. The good and bad in life will come to pass, for they do not come to stay. Be happy anyway. Be happy
Let's move into today. So as I said, this month, that is our nation's Freedom Month, which makes sense, we are having, oh, it's not there anymore. Okay, freedom from discord. It was there a minute ago. This idea of freedom from discord. And this is actually part of a longer phrase within Ernest Holmes' statement, What I Believe, that in our movement, in its infinite wisdom, decided to call What We Believe, which is only scary for some of us who grew up in Catholicism and thought it was another catechism, that we had to say, yes, I believe that, yes, I believe that. Well, you don't have to. You can be here and pick and choose, really, because that's what we do here. But within that, What I Believe or What We Believe statement is a statement that is very controversial, even among our centers. And he says this, Ernest Holmes does: we, or I, believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be achieved by all. Ultimate goal of life, complete emancipation from all discord. Some of us go, woohoo, I love this teacher. I'm going to go to this church because that means I can do whatever I want and life will always be good and yay! Well, not really. And so today I want to unpack that and talk about what, for me, that does mean, and first of all, what it doesn't mean. And I'm calling this your Emancipation Proclamation because one of the first times I read that statement, I, of course, because it had the word emancipation, I thought of Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation back in 1863, just so you know I looked it up. That while it wasn't a complete success, it did prove a vision for us to live by that attempted to free a group of people, that we're still working that out, and we're still definitely working out this Emancipation Proclamation of Ernest Holmes, and I hope by the end of today we will have come up with a true idea of an emancipation that you can all claim for yourselves. So let's unpack this a little bit. The first part of the statement, this emancipation part, let's look at that word. We ministers love to look things up, so we get all these cool words that we know what they really mean. But it's such a great word. Emancipation, we all know that it has to do with freedom, but specifically what it means in my little thin dictionary, it's this thick, is not constrained or restricted by custom, tradition, or superstition. Not constrained or restricted by custom, tradition, or superstition. Then to emancipate adds just a little bit more, to free from restraints or influence. I thought that influence thing was kind of cool. So this teaching, the science of mind and spirit, does emancipate us. In fact, I remember Kathy Ann saying a couple times when we co-taught foundations that she felt like the main value of this teaching, or what is within this teaching, is that it teaches freedom. It is a teaching of freedom. And what is very true, and one of the things that I love about this teaching, is that it does emancipate us from the constraints of our history, from the constraints of what we might have felt was a dysfunctional family upbringing, from maybe past alcohol and drug use, a lack of education, bad decisions, all of those things that many people in our lives, and some scripture too, will tell us limit us, and that make it so we can't or don't deserve to have joy in our lives, to have the things we most deeply desire in our lives. Well, the science of mind tells us that is not the truth. It doesn't matter what your past has been. And Margaret shared that in her songs already today. That we can tell a new story. We can lean into a new story. We can choose to have the lives we most deeply desire, regardless of the past. We are not constrained, restricted, or limited. So that is true. We are emancipated. At the same time, as I look around these days, I think we have a real confusion about what freedom means. It was easy to see in Ukraine, and I noted that when I was going to talk about this, first about my most recent experience in Ukraine, and then I realized as I was doing more of it, it's happening here too in a different way. Ernest Holmes said, I'm going to say a lot of things he said today, which is not always true, but I have to find that one. He said, the evolution of the idea of freedom in the human is slow. The true idea of what freedom is and means is evolving very slowly in the human race. And it is true. I think in many ways we are at our adolescence. It was easy to see this time in Ukraine, where now they're as many years into past the fall of the Soviet Union, and there's lots of stuff happening over there. But one of the things that I see in Dr. Barbara, the spiritual director there, is experiencing, especially among her practitioners, as she said, okay, now you've licensed as a practitioner, you have responsibilities to be active and loyal and supporting to this community. That is what we ask of our practitioners here. That's what we expect of them, that they show up at stuff, they support stuff, they support the leader. If they don't agree, they come talk it out, and that they give of their time, talent, and treasure. And we ask you members to do that also. Well, she's getting a lot of pushback these days, and the underlying statement in the pushback is, you can't tell me what to do. Because they're starting to play with this idea of freedom, but what it looks like is what we remember, if we've blanked out our own past, what those of us who've had teenagers remember is their thing. You can't tell me what to do. I can drive the car now. I'm headed out. That's always a scary moment, isn't it? And I think I can attribute a lot of the stuff I'm seeing in our country that I don't like right now to a similar confusion about freedom. My take is that with all the difficulty and fear, and you can say it's because the internet, we're all connected now, we all know what's going on everywhere in the world, and the difficult news, that there's this kickback and reaction claiming freedom, but freedom in a very adolescent way. Have you ever noticed how rules of the road don't seem to exist anymore? It's like people are just free. Well, I'm free. I don't have to use my signal. Not that I've engaged in a conversation with anybody, but I feel like that's the evidence. I can drive however I want to. Doesn't that feel like what we see? I can drive however I want to because freedom. That's how my husband talks about it when he sees people doing things. I'm stepping a little bit into a controversy, but there's so many I could. Many people don't believe that vaccinations are safe, and so they don't have their kids vaccinated. Maybe somebody here hasn't done that. And when we make that decision not to vaccinate our kids, what can potentially happen is that diseases that we have had under control are now outbreaking again. That when people decide to drive like they want to drive, I don't need to use my blinker, nobody does anyway, then there's more potential for accidents. So we've taken this claim freedom to do it my way, but it seems to me that we've lost any thought of the common good. Both political parties, and, as a Democrat, that used to be the party of the common good. We seem to have forgotten this. We're free now to create charter schools, so who cares about those public schools? We don't care about the people who go to those schools. We don't care about getting those kids really great educations. Maybe charter schools are wonderful. I have not been to one. But as we put our focus on the freedom to have those, we have taken our focus and our tax dollars and our attentions away from how we can make the public schools that everybody goes to excellent. Because freedom. That's an adolescent idea. Ernest Holmes, in 1937, talked about the spiritual meaning of freedom. And that's where he talked about this slow evolution, because it's a difficult, big idea. He said, the idea of freedom itself must be, because it is, to his mind, tied up with the concept of the unity of good. We know this is what we are taught here, that we live in a universe of unity. We are one. We are one with the people we know. We are one with the people we don't know. And every decision I make affects the rest of the planet. Whether it's to choose to, bring my grocery bag and reuse it, or to I live in a place now where I do fast showers because we don't have water. Am I free to take a longer shower? Yeah. But it's not in the common good of where I live. So there is this idea that true freedom, real freedom, has to come from a place of our recognition of unity. And this isn't, I told first service, this isn't about, that's back to, I shouldn't tell somebody what I really think because it might hurt their feelings. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about being codependent. I'm not talking about being politically correct when it just muddles everything. I'm talking about being so connected to capital T truth, that truth of our oneness, that I make the decisions for my life based on what is a greater good, knowing that my greater good is tied to your greater good. That's just the way it is. We also know from a less sort of spiritual viewpoint that there are always consequences. The law doesn't excuse us from consequences, the law of cause and effect. So, if I do nasty unto you, it will come back and bite me in certain places. But it really is out of, may I be so connected to that idea of unity that the choices I freely make are in that direction. And thank God that is possible for each of us. But this idea that freedom means I can do whatever I want. Not really. That's not true freedom. The second idea of this phrase is the one that's even more sort of, how do we play with this? Emancipation, complete emancipation from all discord of every nature. We all kind of hope, maybe this was just me, when I came into this teaching, that, maybe if I just pray enough and affirm enough, nothing bad will ever happen to me again. Did anybody sort of have that, thank God, had that secret hope, that if I just did it right, and then if something bad happens, we make it up that we've done it wrong. But even Emma, and somebody may confirm or deny this, but I believe that even our Emma Curta Hopkins, her son died while she was still alive. So she, the strongest affirmer and denier that's probably been on the planet, she didn't escape from tragedy. This is not a teaching that says nothing bad will ever happen. So what does it mean to be emancipated from discord? We can't know that, we will be, because then life is just going to be easy and pleasant for the rest of our lives. Yay! So what can we claim? I'm going to stop now. No. So I just said you aren't really free to do what you want, and you won't be free from having anything icky happen to you. Well, I think that there are three things, or I'm going to talk about three things, that we are free to have, free to be. And they all kind of flow out of each other. The first is that I said this in a different way, we are free to evolve and deepen into that place where our free choices are in alignment with Spirit. They are in alignment with the greater good. That there is nothing that will keep any of us, unless we just decide to go unconscious, there's nothing that will keep any of us evolving into a greater connection with Spirit, so that those things that we most want to do and be will be a blessing for everybody, not just us. That's a promise of this teaching, in fact, that we will evolve as we stay with this teaching. Or really, I think, as we investigate many of the spiritual teachings on this planet and follow and be true to that deep voice of Spirit. We are free to live from that unity. The second thing is we are free to choose responses that lift us and lift everyone else. That we can be emancipated from our own knee-jerk, hurt, defensive responses of stuff. I read a couple months ago in Science of Mind magazine, there wasn't a person that the quote was attributed to, and I had never heard this before, but I loved it. And it was, I don't have to like what happens, but it is imperative that I like who I am in the situation. I went, oh, I love that. Following on from that, I may not choose what happens, what shows up in my life, but I am free to respond in such a way that I can be open to blessing. When Mark Mirante and I divorced after 26 years, we chose to do something called collaborative divorce. And I had a bunch of ground rules. The attorneys had ground rules about how we had to treat each other during this process. And they also would not go, if it went to trial, they would step back because they weren't there to represent us in front of a judge and do that. But in the ground rules, it was treating each other with respect and kindness, and really not having that divorce process rip our relationship, even though we had already made the decision not to be in a marriage relationship anymore. We wanted to be able to still come together at family times and still have that kind of love intact. And we did. There were some times when we were both really challenged. It's amazing how just the word divorce, you start going, even though that wasn't the thing. You did this, that wasn't the thing. But by having those ground rules and re-choosing that I was free to go beyond the conventional idea of divorce as, breaking each other down. We were both able to do that. We had that freedom. We were free from old definitions of divorce. And so we can still be and are still connected. The most important for me is that we are emancipated. Here's the truth, I think. We are emancipated from the need to have anything that shows up in life diminish us. That's sort of the negative way of saying it. We are free to have everything that unfolds in our life be a blessing. So what I'm saying is not that everything will be great and not that everything will be fun in the moment. There's some hellacious things that have happened to some of us here and some hellacious things that may be happening. There are tragedies that will show up. but we do not have to choose to be diminished by them. We are the ones who decide what the fallout, the result of everything that shows up in our life will be. Now, those of you who know me well may remember a time I got up on the pulpit, it was in the other sanctuary, and railed against, it's all good. Because a lot of people say, it's all good, when they mean I don't care enough to go and fix whatever needs fixing. This is the real meaning of it's all good. That we do not have to be limited or shrunk or constrained by anything that shows up in our life. Conversely, we can expand with it. This has been promised, actually, in Scripture for thousands of years. The story of Jacob and the coat of many colors. His brothers are jealous. They throw him in the pit. The Pharaoh finds him. He gets to be the Pharaoh's advisor. The brothers have to come to him because of a famine, and they didn't know it was him, and they see it's their brother that they basically tried to kill, and they're like, uh-oh. And Jacob says, it's okay. You meant this for my bad, but God meant it for my good. Now, that's not to say that the Supreme visits difficulties on us for our good. I don't believe that. But I believe that we get to decide what the ultimate meaning of anything in our life is. We decide. And it's an idea that comes from quantum physics. This is about all I can tell you about quantum physics. Other people can really go into it, but this is about all I can tell you. Is we know Deepak Chopra calls God the field of all possibilities. There is a field of all possibilities, and that all possibilities collapse into one thing when we call it, when we decide, when we draw conclusions about events. Then the possibilities collapse. My younger daughter, Kira, was waiting for her letter from the college she really wanted to go to. And the New York Times had just had a front page article that was a letter from the admissions dean at the college she wanted to go to, apologizing to all the well-qualified young women candidates, saying, we have had so many women apply this year. There's so many of you who in a normal year we would accept that we won't be. And she came home and said, Mom, look at this. It was on the New York Times. I'm never going to get there. Well, Peter Hanna, who knew Kira because he'd worked with her in the teen program, I happened to talk to him about this, and he said, Liz, you know, there's 2 letters out there until they arrive. There's 2 letters out there. And I said that to Kira, and she kind of went, ooh. And it was hard to explain, but I got it. There are still 2 possibilities out there, and if we fix on one, that's going to pull that to us. She got the letter. She went to her school. And she was not a straight-A student, and she was not a valedictorian. She was a great kid who loved learning, and she had a great time and did great. Perhaps a deeper example comes actually from Monterey, my former community in Monterey. That church was founded by a man named Carlton Whitehead, who was an icon in our movement. And because at the time there were 2 organizations, there was International Religious Science. We in the former United here had not heard about him much, but his name was Carlton Whitehead, and he was a mighty, mighty, mighty teacher of this truth. And years after he had founded the church in Monterey, then he went on to Chicago. He retired and was back visiting in Monterey, and my assistant, a longtime member and church administrator, Maria, had gone out to lunch when he was visiting. She'd gone out to do some errands and gotten in a fender bender. And so when she got back to the center, she was, nervous like you are when you've been hit. And he said, Maria, what's wrong? And she said, oh, I was just in this fender bender. And, she's worried that her neck or back, whatever else, what would happen, how she could get her car fixed. And Carlton Whitehead, she said, pulled himself up to his full height, which was something like 5'2". He pulled himself up to his full height and said, nothing but good will come from this. And he knew that and declared that with every fiber of his being. And she said she felt the cells in her body realigning. That he called it. He called it, and the all possibilities that could have gone in different ways could collapse around it. Maybe we lose a child. Maybe we lose a job. Maybe we get an illness. We can decide that this is not only the end of life as we know it, because of course it's the end of life as we knew it, and we can make that decision. And that life from then on is going to be less and sad and difficult. Or we can say, Spirit through me is going to make something new out of this, something expanded. I may always have a hole in my heart. But through that, I can still choose to have a life where I know blessing and I be a blessing. And that's the emancipation I want you to take with you today. How do we keep in that? Well, and somebody said why you would know, Kathy Ann, spiritual practice, daily spiritual practice. So whoever said that, you were right. This is the part where all your practitioners and ministers agree. What's your spiritual practice? Daily spiritual practice disciplines your mind so you can remember to turn it. You can remember that you have the choice. You can remember to keep your mind off the, what could happen, and that you can reframe it, that you can choose to live in unity and know that. And it also builds your faith so that as you go through your life, you see the blessings, you see the graces that have already occurred, and then when that tough stuff comes, you can know with Emerson, I trust the Creator by all that I have seen for what I have not seen. I trust that I will be guided, that I will be led, that I will be blessed if I am open to that, if I remember that I am free to have that. So as you move through this month, claim that freedom to always be expanded to your life, to God, to each other. Let's pray. And I am so grateful to know that there truly is only one life that I am living, that you are living, that we all are living, and that is the life of God. And that life of God is good in the deepest way. Deeper than happy and sad, deeper than conventional notions of good and bad. It is good with a capital G. That good that leads us into greater freedom. Freedom from those feelings that pass by. Freedom from those limiting ideas that restrict us. Freedom from the need to do it my way when my way would just create conflict. Freedom to know that my life is blessed. And so knowing that one life, I take that one life as my life. And I stand in the knowing of the grace of God for myself and every person here. I stand in the knowing of emancipation from that discord. That emancipation for expanded life, where I truly know I am both blessed and a blessing. And so it is.